Well, let's call to order this meeting of Orangeville Town Council for Monday, May 16th, 2022. Could we have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Taylor. All in favor? Any disclosures of direct or indirect pecuniary interest? Seeing none, could we have a motion to move into closed, please? Deputy Mayor McIntosh, second by Councillor Post. All in favor? All right, we'll see the other link, folks. for May the 16th, 2022. We had an earlier closed session, but if we could start now with our national anthem, please.
Dan Roach.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you again to David Nairn, the Artistic Director of Theatre Orangeville. Our land acknowledgement is as follows. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Odawa of the Three Fires Confederacy. This meeting is being aired on public television and are streamed live and may be taped for later public broadcast or webcast. Your name as part of the public record will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Any member of the public connecting via telephone is reminded to press *6 to mute and unmute. Please remain muted until the chair requests comments or questions from the public. Earlier tonight, we had a closed session, and the reason for it was to discuss an application from 7-Eleven at 268 Broadway, a license appeal tribunal, our report CPS 2022-043 regarding some litigation. And let me just read the Rise and report. There's a recommendation that the minutes of the April 25th, 2022 closed council minutes be approved, and that the confidential report CPS 2022-043 7-Eleven Canada Inc. at 268 Broadway regarding license appeal tribunal regarding litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, be received, and that staff and legal counsel proceed as directed. Could we have a motion for this, please? Councillor Post, second by Councillor Peters. All in favor? Thank you. All right, moving along in our agenda. Could we have a motion to adopt the minutes of the meeting of April 25th, 2022, please? Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Sherwood. All in favor? Thank you. Moving on to item 11, this is presentations, petitions, and delegations. Our first delegate is Mr. Grant Armstrong, who's going to speak about the College Hanson Road barrier removal. Mr. Armstrong.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. My apologies for being late, technical difficulties. Hope everyone's having a great day, and I just wanted to call in and talk about the barrier that's being discussed about being removed or being taken down. A couple of maybe questions that can either be, I don't know how you want this to be done. A couple questions I have to council, as well as a suggestion. I am against right now the barrier being taken down. I believe the original planning for the subdivision called for the full road to be going through. So very curious as to why now we think we need to pull it down. I think also late 2021, and again, if council can answer any of these, it was discussed in 2021 and the barrier would remain until the road was done, as well as I think the bridge might be done by late this September. Is that correct? So again, those are two questions I have for council this time.
Okay, Mr. Armstrong, I'm going to ask Mr. Koselek, our GM of Infrastructure Services, to weigh in here. My understanding is that the bridge is anticipated to be completed in September. However, the road work is some time off. Mr. Koselek, are you on board, sir?
Yes, Your Worship. Hope you can see me now.
Yes.
You're correct. So we have let a contract to construct the bridge. It's been awarded, and the contractor has actually started some preliminary work. The scheduled completion date for the bridge is September 15th of this year. That should be done. The developer that the lands that Hanson Boulevard are on is responsible for the construction of that missing link of Hanson Boulevard. And can't speak to a precise timing to it, but the draft conditions associated with the subdivision were put in place about a year ago, and they required the road to be complete within 3 years of approval of the draft conditions. So that puts it about 2 years out.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. So is there a reason, my understanding is the original subdivision on the west side, it would always require that extension to be fulfilled. Is that correct?
The extension of Hanson Boulevard?
Correct.
Yes. So through Your Worship, the ultimate planning for the development does include both the connections of Hanson and College. As you know, the development isn't fully built out yet, and there are some restrictions on some of the developments that can't happen until Hanson Boulevard fully connects. But ultimately, when the development is completely built out, both Hanson Boulevard and College Avenue would be in place.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that information. So, and I do believe it maybe, Mr. Mayor, I believe council last fall had discussed doing this previously and agreed to wait until the entire road. Is there a reason it's been re-brought up?
We have a responsibility for the residents in Hanson West and to consider their concerns. There's some safety issues there. I've had personal visits from people who have elderly family in that area, concern of heart condition there. If the road was open, it'd be 60 seconds to the ambulance station. Otherwise, it'd be 6 or 7 minute drive around. So these are valid concerns. You know, any emergency in that area would be through one exit. Having either College or Hanson or both open up would help in any kind of an emergency situation over there. And it's been a frustration for everybody living on that side of the Hanson. You know, I think that's just why it's being brought up now to see if there's another potential way to solve the problem.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So I'll make two final comments and a suggestion if you do pass. Again, acknowledging individuals purchased in that area, knowing that sometime it would take until the road. So individuals that bought, they know what they were purchasing at that time. So that'd be my only comment. Safety, as many of you, if anybody lives in that area, I live obviously on Elaine, which is part of the College area. It's a heavy school area. There's already a significant number of children, so adding a significant flow of vehicles through that area poses a significant safety risk. So I ask you to consider that. If council does choose to recommend to proceed, and again, I want to make it very clear, I'm very much against it, but if you do choose to go ahead, I ask you to consider making that entire street west of Blind Line a no parking zone. Because right now during drop off at school, you've got vehicles on both sides. You've got vehicles that park on that road all the time. So what you're actually doing is during the day when vehicles driving, it's actually only one lane. While it may be set up as two, with vehicles on both sides, you're now down to one lane in a school zone, in an area with a play gym. So it's extremely dangerous for students and other kids and all throughout the year to be in that area. And even in the winter months, it's a heavy area. So that's all my comments for tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong.
Take care.
Take care. Okay, moving on to 11.2, we have Linda Moore, who's here to discuss an FCM funding opportunity. Ms. Moore.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on short notice. The town of Orangeville's strategic plan identifies a barrier-free community as one of its core values, and we like to think of ourselves as an inclusive community. However, when it comes to municipal elections, we noticed in 2018 that only 4 out of 17 candidates who ran for Orangeville Council were women. And although half of those who ran were elected and are present here tonight, we still don't have gender parity on council. This is consistent with data from across Canada that in 2021 shows that women held just over a quarter of municipal council seats across the country, which means that the women of Orangeville, as in other places, may be underrepresented in municipal decision-making. Now, research shows that when women run for elected office, they are elected at the same rate as others. However, in light of the fact that Orangeville Council seems to have achieved gender parity only once since it was incorporated in 1863, we suggest that more can and should be done to remove social or other barriers that would enable more women to run for public office. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities, or FCM, agrees and in fact offers municipal governments funding opportunities to take steps towards achieving parity on councils. You may recall that in 2020, the town of Orangeville successfully applied for an FCM Towards Parity grant, one of only 20 such pilot projects awarded across Canada. In that project, the town partnered with local women's group CFUW, who I represent here this evening. As a result of that funding opportunity, we were able to deliver a virtual women's campaign school in the early days of the pandemic. We will know if this project made a near-term impact after nominations close for the 2022 municipal elections. FCM currently has a new funding opportunity available to further this important work, and it's called CanWIL, or Canadian Women in Local Leadership, and it forms part of FCM's portfolio of social inclusion initiatives. They note that the democratic deficit is even more pronounced for women from diverse or marginalized backgrounds. FCM wants to help close this gap because Canada is better served when women in diverse communities contribute their insights and expertise. Their voices enrich our political discourse and inform decision-making. I am here tonight to formally request that the town of Orangeville apply to this FCM CanWIL funding opportunity and to share with you that CFUW Headwaters is standing ready to act as a community partner in support of this important work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Is the success of this application a given, or is it a competition?
It's a competition.
Okay. I'm wondering if we could have Ms. McKinney weigh in on the necessary town resources to go through this and participate in this grant.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it follows a similar path as it did the last time. The application process is fairly brief, but it does require an outline of what would be undertaken as well as a work plan. We did have some internal discussions on this, and I would like to thank Ms. Moore for bringing it forward and for the work previously done in 2020. She certainly was a key part of the success of that initiative. And one of the things we talked about at that time was that as the EDI committee evolved, this is the type of project that the EDI committee could become accountable for. In her evaluation report, she was kind enough to acknowledge the establishment of that committee coming, as well as the consultation that took place. One of the things that the EDI committee is currently undertaking, which I can certainly defer to Councillor Post or Andrews on, is their strategic plan for next year. And town staff also recognize that the timing of this particular application during an election year, where would be actively seeking to encourage candidates to participate in the election process, may not be well served, because if we move towards that in the fall, first, they would be unable to join the current election process, and two, it does seem to be a bit of a conflict in terms of the road mapping of it.
Right. Okay, Ms. Moore.
And just to comment on that, the project window for this particular round, the funding would start in the fall and go for 1 year. So we actually view the project as sort of starting kind of, at the end of the process in preparation for the next election cycle. So not to distract from the current election cycle or impede it in any way.
Is this funding something that happens annually, Ms. Moore?
This is the second competition, so I don't know if it's going to continue in the future. I imagine it will. FCM is very clear in their mandate to achieve gender parity in all councils across the entire country.
Right. All right, I see Councillor Post have her hand up. Go ahead, Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Moore, for being here tonight. I think that this is a wonderful opportunity. The concern that I have as the chair of the EDI committee is that we've already established a work plan for this year, and we do have some limitations as it pertains to resources, but also our mandate. Our mandate is set to end shortly as we do move into an election period, and what's not clear is what's going to happen after the election. So there is a possibility that this committee won't continue. I hope it always continues because as you know, I'm very passionate about it, and I would definitely like to see it continue. But because that's not a given, I'm struggling with the timing of it a little bit. I would really love to be able to take on a project under the EDI umbrella, but as it won't necessarily be my mandate going forward, I'm struggling a little bit with the timing of it and how we can make that work in an appropriate way. And having to leave it on a member of town staff's desk doesn't seem like the right way to move it forward either. You know, I believe that when we do a project like this, we have a responsibility to do it the justice that it deserves. And I'm worried that the timing of it falling in an election year, it won't necessarily get the respect and the responsibility that it deserves. I'm not sure. Maybe Ms. McKinney could weigh in on that as well to see if there's any additional thoughts, but that would be my concern from an EDI perspective, and perhaps Councillor Andrews has other comments to add, but.
Ms. McKinney.
Mr. Mayor, I'll defer to Councillor Andrews, who has his mic off.
And I have my mic on.
Councillor Andrews, go ahead.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the chair of the EDI committee, Councillor Post, providing the comments. Ms. Moore, it is a pleasure to see you, and I really appreciate the information that you have shared. You know, this is part of the core values of the EDI, and I'm also appreciative that Ms. McKinney had indicated that this could be one of those initiatives. But the timing, I do concur with Councillor Post that the timing may be a bit off, and we are in fact going to be concluding some of the responsibilities of the EDI committee as we move into the election period. So again, I'm deferring to Ms. McKinney if there's any suggestions. You know, I feel that it's important to do the due diligence that's required to make sure that something like this is successful if we are to move ahead with it.
I'm wondering if we could ask Madam Clerk or Madam Deputy Clerk, about to be clerk, about the training sessions for municipal councillors that we've had. Do you know, Madam Clerk, what the numbers were for that training session for municipal councillors that we had?
Mr. Mayor, if I can just clarify, are you talking about the sessions that we just held over April in terms of people that are interested in putting a name forward? Correct. I can tell you, and I'll have to get Carolina to speak to with respect to the attendance at the Shelburne session, but in the Orangeville session, we had about 10 to 12 individuals, but again, this was representative over throughout the county itself.
Right. Ms. Khan, do you have the numbers from Shelburne? Do you know roughly?
The Shelburne session was comparable numbers as well, about 10 to 12. And
would it be appropriate to have another session and maybe do some more advertising and bring out some more women that might be interested, Madam Clerk, or is there a window for this training?
Well, certainly we held a virtual information session, which we recorded, and we're making that available because we do understand that scheduling can be a difficulty sometimes. So that is available on our elections portal. Also, our elections portal does offer a wide variety of information on how to get involved from a candidate's perspective, but also from a voter's perspective. And there's a lot of good resources that way. And of course, we are always available to assist in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peters.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, understanding the arguments already presented, if we could just sort of play it out for the benefit of council and anyone watching. So if we did pursue the funding and understanding, you know, when that timing would occur, what initiatives specifically do we envision being funded with that? And are they tied directly to an election process, or are they more broadly applicable to, you know, the political process and involvement by women in that regard?
Ms. Moore.
I don't know if that question was directed to me, but as a community partner, and the role we played in the first round is CFUW took it upon themselves to design the program, and so while the town was the foundation, it was CFUW conducting the work, and we're prepared to do that again, from whether it's design right to delivery, and the administration of the invoices and that sort of thing. And so there could be a very minimal impact on the town. It would be great if the town wanted to do more. What we were thinking is actually not to talk about, in the application is due June 10th. And like I said, the project window starts, I think, around September for a year. We were thinking more of a community-wide approach, because this particular funding opportunity focuses on women of diverse backgrounds and more marginalized groups. We felt that there needs to be a softening in this community of resistance to that diversity being represented on council. And so our approach was much broader, with public events and having local diverse women's leaders talk about it. And to make it more personal, to for the community to hear women speak for themselves about what their capacities are, so to overcome stigma and other kinds of resistance.
Right. Just thinking about the timelines here again, knowing what happened after the last election, it did take some months for committees to be constituted. They weren't really put together until sort of the early spring, as I recall, and that would be the case in 2023 as well, as far as whether or not, it sounds like the EDI committee is the right place for this to be considered at, and to be, cooperating with CFUW with. I don't know, does somebody want to put a motion on the floor here on this, and we vote on this? Because I think that would be the way to, tie a knot on this, either yes or no. And if it's a no, I think once we are back, with the new elected council, Ms. Moore, I think that might be the time, if this gets defeated, I'm just speculating, that whenever the next opportunity comes in the next council term, that it's an excellent idea, and we should obviously move forward with it, in my opinion. Councillor Peters again.
Yeah, thanks. Just to follow up, and thanks, Ms. Moore, for your explanation there. So to me, as much as this, aligns with a mandate of a certain committee, there are many activities that happen outside the realm of town committees. And if we have a willing partner, and again, with Ms. McKinney's sort of approval of staff resources, it is a good initiative, and getting funding through these opportunities can be limited. So to me, I don't think anything negative would come out of this, and I certainly don't think there's anybody stepping on each other's toes. It may even be good to fill that committee gap that may exist for 3 or 4 months with an initiative like this. To Ms. Moore's point, if there are people that didn't consider going through the election process this time, but having just witnessed it firsthand, giving them another 4 years of opportunity to build up the concept of running in a future one, I think would be a benefit. So I would move to go through with it again with staff approval, and with the understanding that when the next opportunity comes, perhaps that's a committee initiative. But if CFUW is here to help us, I think we should take it.
Right. Councillor Sherwood, do you have a comment or question?
Yes, through your worship, to Councillor Post. When does your EDI committee meet again? Is it before the June 10th deadline?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Sorry, spot there, Councillor Post.
No, that's okay. The next date is the 9th. Is the next date that we meet, so it's only one day ahead of. And I completely understand what Councillor Peters is saying, and I like the suggestion. I would like to hear from Ms. McKinney as to which department or where it would land. Again, I think that something like this really needs to have a good home, and because we don't have a diversity and inclusion department within the town of Orangeville, I'm not sure who would be tasked with that or where that capacity would fall from the town of Orangeville perspective. And again, I'd really like to see this initiative move forward. I do just worry about the timing of it.
Ms. McKinney, do you have an idea of where we can draw resources to move this forward?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, naturally staff serve at the direction of council, so should we be directed to do this, we will make it happen. It's not part of our work plan. As you know, the clerk's department in an election year is dedicated to facilitating and coordinating an effective and well-run election. And HR has a subcomponent of a person's time dedicated to supporting the EDI committee. That being said, and if it's council's wish, we will make this happen.
Okay. All right, so if I'm reading this correctly, Councillor Peters is willing to make a motion on this to move this forward. Do we have a seconder on this? Okay, we've got Deputy Mayor McIntosh seconding. Any further comments, councillors, or questions before we vote on? This is a request. I'm sorry, Karen?
Mr. Mayor, if I can just ask that you include as part of this motion, since you will have something on the floor, just that you waive the procedures, just to allow for the introduction of this matter this evening.
Yes, okay. Thank you. All right, so I guess we need to, Madam Clerk, do we need to vote on that first? On waiving?
That would be preferred, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Okay, so again, with the short timeline, councillors, we need to, pass a motion to allow this to be considered tonight and in quick order because of the timelines of that. So can we have a motion to waive our procedure in order to move this ahead? Councillors Andrews and Sherwood, all in favor of that? Okay. So the request is to instruct town staff to apply to the FCM for a CanWIL grant to increase the participation of women, and particularly women with intersectional identities, in elections for council, and I guess to provide the necessary resources to make this happen in concert with the CFUW. Ms. Moore, you're prepared to work on this grant yourself, or you're with your team?
Absolutely. We'd be very pleased to.
Okay. So just as long as you understand that the burden of this application may be falling on your shoulders more than staff at this point in time. We agree?
Understood.
Yeah. Okay.
Agreed.
All right. So we have a motion on the floor to move this ahead and to allow staff to make the formal application to FCM. All in favor? All right. Ms. Moore, thank you for your time tonight, and we'll be in touch and we'll get things rolling. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Good evening.
Okay. All right. Good night. All right. Moving on to 12 staff reports. The first one is 12.1. This is a status update on policies that have been approved by our CAO. I think, Council, this is a good report. It's something that probably has come out of our recent conversations with our CAO about providing a deeper level of information to us, and really appreciate the information contained on this report. Madam Clerk, do we need to make a motion to receive this report?
Yes, please.
Okay, can we have a motion, please, to receive this report? Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Sherwood. Any comments or questions of this report? All in favor? Thank you. Moving on to 12.2. This is the renewal of a transfer payment agreement with the Orangeville and Area Small Business Enterprise Center. This is a funding agreement. It's a very good thing. I wonder if Councillor Andrews would like to speak briefly about this and the benefit of the Small Business and Economic Enterprise Center.
Well, thank you. I know that we do have Ms. Phillips representing the ED office and, of course, the Small Business Enterprise. Truly delighted to see this information presented to Council this evening. This particular initiative has been around since 2003. The opportunity to support, be that through the Starter Company Plus, as well as those that would be part of the Summer Company. Prior to my election in 2018, I had the privilege of sitting on the committee that was, in fact, responsible for approving some of the young entrepreneurs that put forth a variety of initiatives. And I think the opportunity here to continue that legacy of young entrepreneurship and those that are even, new entrepreneurs in our community. I know that Your Worship, we had the opportunity yesterday to meet a new proprietor in our community, and in fact has been the benefactor of some of the support through Ms. Phillips and Mr. Jameson's guidance. So I would like to just pass things on to Ms. Phillips if she has any other comments, but certainly very pleased at seeing this on the agenda this evening.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Phillips, welcome, and thank you for everything you do through our Economic Development Department. And would you wish to make a few comments on this?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think Councillor Andrews did an outstanding job at presenting the agreement. As mentioned, the SBEC agreement has been in place since the program's inception in 2003. And the agreement before Council this evening really outlines the agreement terms that will follow in agreement with the province of Ontario for the period of April 2022 until March of 2024, with a possible extension of the agreement until March of 2025. And this is commonly how our agreements roll out. The business plan and related metrics that were created by our office will guide the activities of the SBEC Centre over the next 2 years, and funding from the province remains unchanged at a little over $156,000 a year, or about $312,000 for a 2-year period. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, Your Worship.
Great. Councillors, any questions or comments further? Councillor Andrews?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to add, again, the tremendous work that is under the leadership of Ms. Phillips and her team. The other piece there, I'm hoping that members of council saw this, but the marginalized members of our community who have an opportunity to as well to garner support. I was very pleased to see that as part of the metrics and included in that document. And again, as Councillor Post and I co-chair with the EDI, that's a very important message to our community as well, and those that may be seeking entrepreneurship initiatives, even in the summer company as well.
Right. Very good. So we have a recommendation that reports CMS 2022-013 dated May 16th, 2022 regarding renewal of the transfer payment agreement. The Orangeville and Area Small Business Enterprise Center be received, and then a bylaw be presented to council authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement between Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario and the Corporation of the Town of Orangeville for the delivery of the Orangeville and Area SBEC program and any other documents related to this initiative. Can we have a motion on that, please? Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Post. Any further questions? All right, all in favor? Okay, thank you, Ms. Phillips, and your team. All the best. All right, we've got our next item is an exciting moment here. It's the appointment of our new town clerk. I want to, Ms. Carolina Kahn has been part of our team now for over 2 years. She's been a delight to work with, and I know under the guidance of our clerk, Karen Landry, is continuing to carry on the strong tradition of town clerks in the town of Orangeville. So, Ms. Landry, did you want to make a couple comments here?
Well, I'll say just a few words. Just that Carolina is by far an exceptional employee. You will be in extremely good hands. It is, I want to thank Council, Andrea McKinney and Brennan and Jennifer Gowan, all for being a part of this process and doing the succession plan. And believe me, Carolina will continue to build on the successes that we've had, and we'll move it well into the future. And she's just an exceptional leader, and you are going to be in just, I'm going to say, better hands. There you go.
Okay, well,
thank you.
I don't know, Karen, you've done a wonderful job for the time you've been with the town. We thank you for your service, and I know you're going to carry on. There's going to be a transition period for a few months now as you move towards your retirement, and Carolina picks up the reins here. So thank you to both of you. So the recommendation is that the report CPS 2022-027 regarding the appointment of the town clerk be received, and that the council pass a bylaw to appoint Carolina Khan as town clerk. Can we have a motion on that, please? Deputy Mayor McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Taylor. Any further comments? All right, all in favor? Very good. Congratulations, Ms. Khan, and thank you for everything you do for us. All right, moving on. 12.4. This is final tax rates. And just let me open this up. So this is a recommendation that the report CPS 2022-029 regarding the 2022 final tax rates be received, and that council pass a bylaw to provide for the levy and collection of taxes required for the town of Orangeville for the year 2022 and for the collection of County of Dufferin and education taxes. Can we have a motion on this, please? Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Taylor. Councillors, do you have any questions of our treasurer or anyone on staff regarding this? Seeing none. I did want to point out to council and the public, one of the reports showed the amount of money that Orangeville pays to the County of Dufferin. It's $17 million. And yeah, it's a lot. And I think those going forward, representing the town of Orangeville, we're going to have to do our homework here and make sure that the town of Orangeville is getting its fair shake on that money that's being spent, because it's a lot, and I'm struggling with the value of it. And I think Orangeville is big brother here for the rest of Dufferin County, and you know, taxpayers of Orangeville are funding and subsidizing an awful lot in Dufferin County. And I'm wondering if we need a better deal, frankly, going forward. So whoever's going to be in that chair in the future, whether it's myself or somebody else, I hope in the future we consider that, because we're paying a heavy toll here. And I'm questioning it right now after sitting in that chair for now 3.5 years. All right. So can we have, I guess we're going to call a vote on this. For approving this. All in favor? Thank you, council. Moving on to 12.5. This is education development charge update. It reads as follows. This is a recommendation that report CPS 2022-038 dated May 16, 2022 regarding education development charge update be received. Can we have a motion on this? Councillor Sherwood, seconded by Councillor Peters. Again, I need to draw everyone's attention to this, because the development charges are doubling, 100% increase over 5 years. I don't know when the last time a school was built in Orangeville, but it's been a while. And I wonder, you know, how these numbers are, but we're getting it in the neck again here, folks. I mean, 100% increase in 5 years is I don't understand it, and I wish we could push back against it, but I don't know the mechanism or the legislation to do that, but I just need to point that out. It's shocking to me. All right, folks, we've got this motion on the floor. All in favor? Yeah, I'm going to vote no. So I don't agree with it. Okay, so moving ahead, let's go to 12.6. Vehicle for hire bylaws license expiry, and let me read this again for the public. This is the report CPS 2022-039 vehicle for hire bylaw license expiry be received, and the council amend the bylaw to align the license expiry dates of vehicles for hire going forward. This is just a housekeeping matter. The previous bylaw had a few dates that were not aligned properly, and we are correcting that with this. So can we have a motion on this, please? Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Taylor. Any further questions? All in favor? Thank you. All right, moving on to 12.7. This is the 2022 first quarter operating fund variance. Let me read the report. There's a recommendation that report CPS 2022-40 regarding the 2022 first quarter operating fund variance be received. Fortunately, this is a positive variance in the favor of the taxpayer and the town. Any questions or comments, councillors? Can we have a motion on this? I'm sorry, Councillor Sherwood, seconded by Councillor Peters. No questions, all in favor? Thank you. All right, moving on to 12.8, a similar report on first quarter capital progress. This reads as follows, the report CPS 2022-042 regarding the 2022 first quarter capital progress be received. This is an interesting report. It shows how the various projects, capital projects the town is embarking on, the progress of them. There's only 2% that have been, I guess, completed. 87% are in progress and 11% are yet to be initiated. Sorry, can we have a motion on this? Again, Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Andrews. Councillor Taylor, go right ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to let staff know how much I enjoy these reports. Like it's something I recall Councillor Peters bringing up a couple of years back, and it was how are we progressing on these things, and are we doing it in a timely fashion? And so I enjoy reading the reports. I guess the piece that is concerning to me, and you're mentioning some cost escalation pieces tonight, Your Worship. The last paragraph in there, and I think it is well worded on our treasurer's part, and that's just something that all of us need to be aware of. And these are unprecedented times, again, for a different reason. And if you're involved in projects, which I am in my own personal life, the cost escalation that's happening is defeatist at times. So I guess I want to caution citizens, and I want to just call it out to council that we're all going to have to be aware that revisions are probably going to be made as we go forward from when these things came to fruition to where we're sitting now. And I just thank the treasurer for calling it out. I think it was very appropriate to do so. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. I too like seeing these progress reports. It really opens our eyes sometimes on how long things take. For example, one of the very first things under Table 2 is the water meter and billing upgrade that has been on the table since 2011. And here we are 11 years later. Could I get an update, please, from staff onto the status of that water meter installation?
Mr. Koselleck.
Yeah, of course, Your Worship. There's actually going to be a report come to council in June on this. So I can't speak to the history, but we have selected a technology. It's an AMI technology that allows for remote reads, and it also allows for a lot of interesting features to allow residents to find out more quickly if they have a leak or unusual consumption, that sort of thing. So the report will also talk about some financial implications, because the estimated cost of the project, like everything else these days, is over what we're anticipating. It will talk about the public education program that's going to accompany the meter installation, because it's fairly intense, and to do a good job with it, we have to do a lot of public outreach and ensure that we get really good coverage. It'll talk about what happens if somebody refuses, that sort of thing. So that's going to come, I believe, the first council meeting in June, and then we will move to a procurement stage to invite tenders for the installation and start installation. I'm not sure the timing for installation, probably close to the end of the year. And the best estimate of our consultant is that the installation could be completed within 1 year.
Thank you, Mr. Koselleck. That's good to know, because I know our current water meters that are installed in our homes are really aging. So it's time that we get those replaced and get more up to snuff, right? So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Great. Madam Treasurer, if I could call upon you. following up on Councillor Taylor's comments about escalating costs, can you speak to contingencies and how we might handle sometimes surprising increases in, particularly construction costs, and how are we situated financially for taking on the burden of extra expense?
Thank you, Worship, and through you to the rest of the council. First of all, if I could just take a moment to thank Councillor Taylor for recognizing that blurb or that paragraph over there. In terms of contingency, I mean, the first place to go is definitely our reserves and reserve funds. I mean, that's what they're primarily for. We also have the potential to borrow. Further than that, I think, and I'm actually working on a report that I very much intend to bring to council in the first meeting of June. This whole situation with global inflation and further the Canadian inflation is playing out in real time. One of the things that I will highlight, and I think most of you already know this, Bank of Canada has decided to roll out 6 different interest rate only this year, and leading all the way up to November of this year. So when Bank of Canada releases 6 separate days, that tells me that this is a very fluid situation and it's almost changing day to day, month to month. So, Your Worship, if I really have to be very honest with you, we are, particularly for myself, I'm looking at the market, I'm looking at the upper 2 levels of government to see what kind of contingencies are in place in their budget to help the municipal government out. I'm also looking at industry leaders. But further to that, we do have a sustainable reserve balance to get us through. But at this point in time, I guess like the rest of the world, we really have to sit and watch and let some of these things play out. And very much the way we tackled and overcame the pandemic-related financial issues, we probably have to deal with this very accordingly. So at this point in time, and I will be presenting more information to you via my report in June. So the mystery is I don't want to give out everything right now today. So, but I'm more than certain that municipalities will be, to an extent, supported by the upper 2 levels of government as they did during the pandemic, especially the provincial government.
Very good. Thank you for that additional information, Madam Treasurer.
Thank you.
All right. Let's move on to 12.9 then. This is a sewage disposal agreement with Dufferin Vacant Land Condominium Corporation. Let me read this. This is the report CPS 2022-042 regarding, I'm sorry, wrong one, hold on, sorry. All right, this is that report INS 2022-033, the sewage disposal agreement with Dufferin Vacant Land Condominium Corporation, number 22, be received and the council pass a bylaw to enter into an agreement with the Dufferin Vacant Land Condominium Corporation, number 22, to accept sewage on an as-needed basis. So Coles Notes version is this is the Watermark subdivision at, I guess, County Road 16 and Highway 10, and they have their own private sewage treatment plant, which requires maintenance from time to time. And when they do shut down their system, we will take some of the sewage by truck and process it at our wastewater control plant. Councillor Taylor, you wanted to speak on this?
Yes, sir. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Koslak for the brevity and just the understanding of the report. Super easy, but I candidly was scanning all the way down, waiting for one thing, and it's the second last line, and that is that the town is fully offsetting their costs. So given that, I think, us being good neighbors and also trying to do what's right for the environment, all these things tie in, and that statement there that we're not out any is exactly what I was looking for. So I would move that we receive this report and approve.
Very good. Seconded by? Councillor, and receive the report and to enter into a bylaw or pass a bylaw to enter in the agreement. So, all right, seconded by Councillor Andrews. Any further questions? All in favor? Thank you, councillors.
Mr. Mayor, I just need to confirm that the vote was taken for 12-8. If we could just call a vote. It was moved by Councillor.
I'm sorry, we may have slipped by that. We had lots of conversation there and we may have slipped by it. So did we get a motion though? We did, I believe.
Yes, I have a motion, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Andrews.
My apologies. All in favor of the first quarter capital progress report? Okay, thank you, receiving it. Thank you very much. Moving on to 12:10, and this is, let me read the report again. It's a recommendation that report INS 2022-034 regarding 200 Elizabeth Street. The recommendation report RZH 2022-02 and RD 2022-02 be received, and that the holding of the removal of the holding symbol application and the bylaw to remove a holding symbol on lands legally described as parts of lots 1 and 2, block 4, registry plan number 237, Town of Orangeville, County Dufferin, municipally known as 200 Elizabeth Street, included as attachment number 3 in this group, be approved, and that the residential demolition application RD 2022-02 be approved, subject to the following conditions: that the site plan application be approved and a site plan agreement be executed prior to the issuance of any demolition permits, that the applicant construction substantially completes the new buildings to be erected on the subject property no later than 2 years from the date of the issuance of the demolition permit, and that a construction waste management plan be implemented by the developer. Can we have a motion on this, please? Councillor Post, second by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. Any questions or comments? Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sometimes during a council meeting, no matter how prepared you are, some things spontaneously come about when we take a look at some of our agenda items. And here's one that comes to mind as it's close to my neighborhood, but it is also a very busy school area. And just for the sake of getting some clarification, I know that we have some residents of the area who had reached out. And again, it's one of those spontaneous questions pertaining to safety whenever a demolition takes place. Would someone on staff might be able to provide just some clarity on how that is in fact conveyed to the developer?
Mr. Ward, you're talking about demolition safety issues?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Building department, but Mr. Ward, maybe you can steer this.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I'll try my best to answer that question to my knowledge. To the best of my knowledge, I believe that would be regulated more specifically through the building permit issuance process, looking at matters with respect to site confinement and such, and you know, safety measures associated with the activity itself would happen through that process.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ward.
All right. All in favor? Thank you, councillors. Moving on to 12.11, this is 243 Broadway demolition on a municipal heritage registry property. Let me read this to you. This is the recommendation that the report INS 2022-035 243 Broadway demolition on a municipal heritage registry property be received, and the council does not oppose the demolition of an attached garage structure on the property. Can we have a motion on this, please? Councillor Peters, second by Councillor Taylor. Any questions, councillors, or comments on this? All right, all in favor? Thank you. Moving on to 12.12. This is regarding 330 Blind Line, and that a report INS 2022-036 330 Blind Line Heritage Permit Recommendation HR 2022-01 be received, and that the Heritage Permit Application file number HR 2022-01 be approved in general accordance with the work proposal included as attachment number 2 to this report. Can we have a motion on that, please? Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Sherwood. Any questions of staff or comments, councillors? All in favor? Thank you. All right, moving on to 12.13. This is the issue regarding the opening of College Avenue to connect with Hanson. And let me read this particular report. This is a recommendation that INS 2022-038, the opening of College Avenue to connect with Hanson Boulevard, be received, and that College Avenue be open to traffic to allow travel from those properties west of Hanson Boulevard, missing link easterly, and that a bylaw be presented to implement an all-way stop at the intersection of College Avenue and Fieldgate Drive, and that a bylaw be presented to restrict heavy construction vehicles from using College Avenue east of Hanson. Do we have a motion to put this on the floor so we can discuss it? Councillor Taylor, seconded by? All right, I'll second it. All right, let's start off with Deputy Mayor. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I might as well get this started. I absolutely do not support this. I feel we are swapping one safety issue for another safety issue. I've never supported this idea. I don't think it's a good idea. I was shocked tonight to hear that it's going to take another 2 years to complete the Hanson extension. That's unacceptable. Surely, as town, we can do something. If we have to pay for it and get the money from the builders somehow, but we can't wait another 2.5, 3 years for this road to go through. That's just ridiculous. And there's got to be something as a town we can do. But when it comes to opening college, I don't think that's the answer. It's a temporary fix. And again, it's going to cause other safety problems, which we're all well aware of by our emails we've been getting and such. So again, those are my thoughts on this, and I absolutely will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, thank you.
Whoever's on the line, please mute your phone by pressing *6.
I think we're good to go.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I know that this is going to, of course, hopefully bring all of us to the conversation. I also agree with the Deputy Mayor upon review of this report. And first of all, I want to thank staff for the information that has been provided. You know, those of us on council, we make decisions based on a lot of different information. And there was extensive information, traffic data, you name it, it was there. But at the same time, logistically, we are moving one problem to another and creating another problem. You know, looking at some of the high level points there, 65%, if I'm correct in saying so, of all the traffic would be redirected onto College, which I have an absolute problem. Safety is paramount. There would be requirements for me to even possibly consider this of a crossing guard, you know, education and so on and so forth. We understand the problem that is on the west end. We know that there's an issue. We want to make sure that we have, you know, those residents taken care of, especially from a safety perspective, emergency services in a timely fashion. But I am really, really concerned about even considering this. And I again agree with the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Koslak. My understanding, sir, is that the warrants for intersections have changed under the Highway Traffic Act. Is that true? And how does it work out now that Fieldgate would make that cut? And will other intersections within town now make that cut, given the changes to the warrants?
Sure, thank you, through your worship. Yeah, we were doing some research associated with actually a different intersection and found that what's called the Ontario Traffic Manual is actually updated in December. And the warrants for all-way stops did change. Essentially, it makes it easier to get an all-way stop. And I'll give you a couple of examples. The peak hour traffic requirement used to be 350 vehicles on the total of all approaches. That's changed to 200 vehicles for the peak 4 hours. So, and there's also been a change in the split warrant from at least 35% of the traffic being on the minor street to 30% of the traffic being on the minor street with, and that also includes pedestrians who may wish to cross the road. So they actually have changed the manual, and I think at the end of the day, it will lead to a little bit of an easier time justifying warrants at certain intersections that are close.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm looking at one of these maps that was part of this report, and this is the 2025 future peak hour traffic, figure number 6. It's showing at the corner of College and Blind Line. That would be traffic traveling eastbound on College at Blind Line. Peak traffic per hour in the peak hours, 132 vehicles in an hour. So that, you know, we got 60 minutes in an hour. You've got 2 vehicles per minute. That's the peak. This is the future peak in 2025. So, you know, what this report is telling us is that the road is designed for this type of volume, that it isn't significant, and that there's no problem actually opening up this. That's what the report says. And it's backed up by, you know, engineers who study this for a living. So I'm, you know, for me, I think it's up to the council to be responsible for both neighborhoods here. There's been safety concerns talked about by the Hanson West neighborhood. I don't think that the safety concerns in on College are warranted. And I lived there for 15 years. I know exactly what it is. There hasn't been any increase in the number of buildings or the number of residents in that time frame. And you know, if they're speeding on College, it's the neighbors, it's the people, you know, in that subdivision that are speeding. That's who's doing it. So maybe some sort of a campaign about, you know, driving safety in your neighborhood is what we need to add into this mix. But I think I'm in support of this, and I think we should move forward. Councillor Taylor and then Councillor Andrews.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Koslak. Mr. Koslak, when you bring up the idea of the stop sign at Fieldgate, is it because of the warrants have changed, or is it, what is the reason of the stop sign, I guess, is my thinking. And maybe one last thing, just to show you where my mind's going, is I've been lectured since I've gotten this privilege of serving on council that stop signs don't necessarily control traffic, but it feels like that's what we're doing. And you know, there's precedent for that now in town. We've done that, right? We've done it on Amelia, we've done it on Diane, and it feels like we're proposing to do it on College. And that's going to bring me to say there's other areas in town that desperately need to have this done as well. And I'm just wondering if there's a change, if there's an opening in the curtain here to that level of thinking, or if, like, I just want to be mentored a little bit on how that decision-making process works. And I thank you for your answer ahead of time.
You're welcome. Through your worship, my opinion, so definitely stop signs do control traffic. I think the message in the past has been that stop signs aren't considered a traffic calming measure, and there's a slight difference in that. When you looked at the old warrants that were done years ago, there was adequate or very close to adequate traffic for an all-way stop at Fieldgate. When I took a look at it, and you look at the additional traffic that will come with the opening, and you also look at the new warrants that are out, I have no doubt that it's going to meet the warrants for an all-way stop. And you know, it's my opinion, if you're going to make a change like this, definitely College Avenue has lots of capacity for traffic. You look at the numbers. Worst case scenario is the development occurs, Hanson doesn't open, and the road is still running at 50% capacity. It has lots of capacity, but what has to be done at the same time is some serious safety measures. So people, while they sense an increase in traffic, they also sense a change in the way the traffic is being managed or controlled. And that's why in conjunction with opening, I think there's a lot of wisdom in doing other things like traffic calming. And that's one of the things that would be very important on a road like this. At the same time that you introduce new traffic, you introduce traffic calming. One of the things that, one of the other things, Councillor Taylor, when we got into discussions, you'll recall the Jaime Garcia did the presentation from SEMA a few months back about traffic calming. And I had some follow-up conversations with him about the use of stop signs for pedestrian activity. So if you look at a road like College, it's a long stretch before there is an opportunity for folks to cross the road at something that's controlled.
That's the fear, right?
Well,
that's
the reality. It's a long stretch. So if somebody wants to cross the road at a controlled intersection, they're basically going to one end or the other. And to me, that's one of the values of putting a stop sign mid-block in that type of scenario, is that not everybody's able to run across the road quickly. And for people that actually need the time to cross the street, people with younger children, seniors, whatever, it's important to have that mid-block crossing, and the block lengths aren't that long. So I appreciated that advice from him. And I do think that, in the longer run, we have to digest these new warrants, but I do think in the longer run, there's value in updating our policy for all-way stops and reflecting in it some intelligence related to, let's call them sort of maximum distances between crossing points, and whether those crossing points are achieved by an all-way stop or a PXO or a signal, depending on what the warrants are appropriate for the area. I think that's an important consideration. That's certainly something that should be reflected in a new policy.
Before I go on to Councillors Andrews, Sherwood, and Post, I did have a conversation earlier today with Mr. Koslak, who's told me that some of those traffic calming signs that Councillors Taylor and Deputy Mayor McIntosh had recommended, those are the ones that look like children and that are traffic calming, have been ordered, along with some of the LED speed signs. This is not photo radar, but just to notify you what your speed is. So council could tack on that onto this recommendation that we install some of those signs on College as well, recognizing that Credit Creek School is there and St. Andrew's School is just around the corner. So let's go on to Councillor Andrews, then Sherwood, then Post. Go ahead, Councillor Andrews.
Thank you again, Your Worship, and Mr. Koselleck. I truly thank you also for the responses that you've provided. Again, as I had indicated from the onset, I was struggling with this, and I'm happy in one hand to hear some of the additional information that you're providing publicly in this forum, as much of this information is available in the report. To the point that the mayor had highlighted, the idea of course, calming measures, the signs that hopefully would be able to reduce the speed of individuals, forms of education. That is a high volume educational area, both Credit Meadows as well as the St. Andrews. One other thought, and again, I referenced this earlier, is the idea, would this be a candidate area for a crossing guard as well as part of that mitigation option? And I'm not sure if that would be something that would be posed to either through Mr. Osmond or through Ms. Fraser, as I know that crossing guards are part of her portfolio, but is that something that could also be included for consideration? Because we want to ensure all areas of this stretch, as much as we've spoken about it being, a change for many people, it is a situation where I think we need to do our due diligence and ensure that we have as many safety measures as possible in place.
So, Ms. Fraser, if you could weigh in and tell us about how you select a crosswalk and implement a crossing guard. Are you on board, Ms. Fraser? Maybe Mr. Osmond in her stead?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's interesting, the crossing guard piece. Councillor Andrews is correct. We do have criteria, although the criteria is something we're actually looking at now. As a matter of fact, like the treasurer earlier, we have a report coming into council in June that speaks to the crossing guard program and the things we've done to change some of the work we're doing crossing guards, and giving council a full overview of all of our crossing guard sites, how they function, how they're set up, and some of the changes in the Traffic Act and so on that really control some of these developments and how they're actually operated. And yes, I mean, there are criteria that's in the system that we would go and visit, take a look at, and if you wanted to include a crossing guard, certainly anywhere on College, then that would be something we would have to bring back to council and get approval on ultimately, but it can be considered, absolutely.
Thank you.
Could that be something that potentially could be linked as part of any agreement or approval?
If council so desire.
Councillor Andrews.
Absolutely.
We can add that on to this if you so desire.
I would like to see that. And one final question, if I can, Your Worship, to Mr. Koselleck. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see any data referencing the weekends. Did I miss that, or was that not included as part of the data?
No, that through Your Worship, it was not included. Typically traffic studies are done on a midweek counts to try and reflect daytime volumes. They in Orangeville tend to be the peaks. Peak hour traffic tends to be AM and PM peaks when people are going to work, that sort of thing. And the weekend traffic tends to be spread out a little bit differently, so you don't get the same peaking. So in our experience, if you want to find sort of the worst case scenario in the peaks, you do them on a Wednesday or a Thursday. Avoid Mondays, Fridays, and weekends. But I think these would tend to be fairly reflective counts of what you'd see sort of where people are going to work or coming home and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, I just wanted to take this opportunity to voice my opinion on this. The report itself is very well done. Thank you, Mr. Koselleck. Very, very well done. And it really makes it really hard for me. And I struggle with making this decision because I am very, I'm very concerned about the issues and very sympathetic to the people in the Veterans Way area with their concerns. They're so valid, yet the people on College and in Elaine and Fieldgate have valid points too. So I sit there and I teeter-totter trying to weigh out the pros and cons. I'm not an engineer, and I do respect very much your expertise on this, Mr. Koselleck. However, I'm just going to make it kind of known right now that I'm going to be voting against this. Again, it's a struggle, but I'm going to vote against it, and I would hope that if it does carry through, that my fellow councillors will consider adding into the recommendation of making it a community safety zone, installing more 40-kilometer-an-hour signs along that. I've had a conversation with Mr. Koselleck this afternoon, and he assured me that more 40-kilometer-an-hour signs would be put in that neighborhood. But again, I'm kind of going by, I'm jumping a little bit gun here, and I'm going to try and stay within my 5 minutes based on the procedure bylaw. But in our next report under 12.14 in the cache development, there was a statement in there that I caught that said that the draft proposal was approved from Edgewood Valley in February of 2021, giving them 3 years to connect the road on Hanson. So that would make it February 2024. As per my conversation with Mr. Koselleck, we don't normally build roads in January and February. So I would be very hopeful that they would have that road in by the fall of 2023. So we're looking at maybe possibly 18 to 20 more months of that road being closed and then reopened. So that's my point. I hope I'm within my 5 minutes, and I could go on, but that's my my point. I will be voting against it, mindful of it's a tough decision.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Before I go to Councillor Post and Deputy Mayor, Mr. Costa, if I could ask one quick question. Is there any precedence for making this a trial? And, if the Jersey barriers are there now, they can be put back again if this does become problem. Is there any precedent for that?
Your Worship, to my knowledge, not, but it's certainly something that's possible. Council could decide to open it for 6 months and monitor the impacts. That would certainly be a prudent decision. I will say hearing some of the comments about safety, I think the safety issues are fundamentally different on one side of the street than the other. The biggest one I heard from council at the previous meeting was about the one access in and out to this development, travel times for emergency services, that sort of thing. I did have correspond with fire, police, and ambulance. All three of them indicated a preference to having it open, especially ambulance. It's a direct connection almost to the ambulance station.
Right.
Those concerns aren't there on the other side of College, but they're connected to the rest of town. But there is a very big safety concern, and I think there's a lot of validity to it. For those people, I'd call it west of that missing link on Hanson Boulevard. It's a long way to get into that development. And like I say, all three of the emergency services expressed support for the opening. But definitely to answer your question, Your Worship, I think a trial would be a prudent option, and you can monitor the actual impacts and see how it performs.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Post and Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Sherwood actually took most of the words right out of my mouth. So when it comes to, especially voting against the recommendations of town staff, I like to be very open in why I'm voting that way. And, I as well had a good conversation today with Mr. Koselak about my concerns with it, because I've really had difficulties weighing this as well. The Veterans Way subdivision deserves to have a second access point. They absolutely do. I'm frustrated by the conversations that have happened over the last several years, where this has been made known a concern for the last 3 years of our council term, and I know before that as well. And earlier on in this term, I brought concerns to council along with other councillors from the College Avenue area that were blatantly dismissed at that point. So I hear the residents on College loud and clear. And in the last 24 hours, I know the rest of council as well has received 24 concerns from College. And there are several concerns that are still coming from the Veterans Way subdivision that need to be dealt with as well. So today, I am not prepared to support the opening of College. However, I believe that there's an opportunity here. I believe that council has an opportunity to have discussions with the folks on College, with the residents in that community, to find out what additional safety measures would make their community feel safe. I think as councillors, we have a responsibility to listen to all those sides before we make a decision of this magnitude. I am comfortable with the idea of moving forward with it being a community safety zone. I'm happy to see that a stop sign is in those lists, but I want to understand before I take a vote supporting an opening like this, what would make those residents feel safe as well, because I'm hesitant to move forward with something that I believe is moving a problem from one neighborhood to another. And although the problems are very different, I'm cognizant of the fact that we don't want to create a new problem to solve one that's been existing for a number of years. So with that, Mr. Koselak, I told you earlier today, I have a lot of respect and a lot of gratitude for the work that you've done on this report. But unfortunately, with the way that it is right now, I just can't bring myself to support it in its current iteration. So if we could defer it and have a conversation about it another day after having some more consultations with the community, I would be more willing to perhaps have this conversation again. So thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Councillor Post, Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Thank you, Worship. My last comments on this. I want to talk to the citizens of the Veterans Way subdivision. I know that's a problem down there. Again, I just don't want to move a safety issue from one area to another. Sitting here, I've been thinking about a notice of motion that I may bring forward at our next council to try to speed things up. I'll talk to town staff. We've got to do something. We've got to get that road through. We can't wait 2 years. We can't wait 3 years. We've been waiting 6, 7, 8 years now. And the other thing about this opening up College, the town didn't just have an epiphany. This road has been here for years and years and not opened. Why was that? Well, safety. And I don't see that anything's changed other than the population's got even bigger. Again, I don't support it. And I will look into bringing a notice of motion to the next meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. As a rebuttal, though, I mean, this report, this consultation really shows that there is no safety concern on traffic volume, that the road's been designed for such volume, that there isn't going to be a significant increase. And that's what the report says. So I tend to go with, you know, the engineers who have done this report and support what they're saying. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. You know, if I was a young man and I was wishing for something, I would wish that the developer would not be pushing us on this other piece to have further building and occupancy and whatnot until we can resolve the capital projects that are in that area. And these two reports that we're going to, this one and the next one, they dovetail together. And candidly, I don't think that that developer is being a great friend to Orangeville. I don't work for the town. I'm an elected official. I can say what I want. I'm not happy with that. And I hope the residents who are coming into that area will be well aware of what they're buying and do their research ahead of time. If we get pushed like this from this developer and they get to go ahead and have their units built before the capital projects are in. So the second part of this goes back to college. And I'm not going to reiterate what my council teammates have said here, but I just, under the circumstances at this point, I just don't see a path forward. I don't know how we can open the road given the circumstances that we're in. So my vote at this time will be no. And if anybody asks me about what that development means to that area moving forward, I'll be telling them.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Peters.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I think it's worth pitching in here as well as the only one who hasn't spoken to the issue so far. So I do respect the engineering piece as well. For me, it's a known versus unknown piece. The unfortunate situation for those west of College is truly unfortunate, and I don't think it's fair to say necessarily you should have known when you bought. This delay goes beyond anything I think we should have expected in that area. But knowing the sensitivity of College and the discussions we've had of that area over this term, whether or not there would be the traffic counts and safety issues to really be reflected is very difficult to say. And I understand the studies tried their best to do that. We are trying to, slow this town down from a traffic perspective, with respect to the speed limits, that kind of thing. That is one of the longer stretches of road, certainly, when you take it all the way from Hansett across to Amelia. So, more, I guess what I'm saying is more in line with what the deputy mayor is saying. We have a problem, we know it exists. And I think that known problem, in terms of, the benefit of the town in the short term, hopefully we are only talking about 18 months, as Councillor Sherwood said. I think the known is a better position than the unknown now. And so I would be voting against opening up the road at this time.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. When it comes to the vote, can we vote for it in separate sections? The reason I'm bringing this forward is if the motion fails, I still want to see the stop sign, the always stop sign. And so I think if we can break that out, then we can vote on it accordingly. I also wanted to ask that, and then I'll be also putting further a motion to have it, those two other points that I mentioned about 40-kilometer zone signs being put on there, and that it be made a community safety zone. So can we break out the vote, and then I can further table it based on how the vote goes?
Sure, I think we can do that. Madam Clerk, can we get a little guidance from you on this? So I'm just wondering, do we need to have the vote? Because without the additional things, for instance, that I would like to see, which is a 6-month trial, the community safety zone, it's, as it stands right now, it's difficult to support this. So should we have the vote, and this is going to fail, and then put another motion on the floor per Councillor Sherwood, Madam Clerk?
Okay, but at this current point, you do have a motion on the floor, and it is as printed in your agenda. So if you want amendments to that motion, you need to call a vote on each amendment first and then call the vote on the main motion.
Okay.
If this is the motion you currently have on the floor,
Right.
it's one as printed in your agenda.
All right. I'd like to take one more shot here before we go ahead here, and that would be that we add on that this would be for a trial period of 6 months to be evaluated, and that this becomes a community safety zone. And that would be a friendly amendment to this motion, the way it stands. Would anybody second that? Councillor Peters? You would?
Yes, thanks.
Second that friendly amendment?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So
could I also comment on it, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So in the interest of getting it on the floor, I think it's important to discuss. So through you, Mr. Koselleck, what metrics would we use to determine whether or not a trial would be a success in this case? I understand this idea just came to fruition, during this meeting, but how might you envision whether we would determine whether it worked or not?
Good question. My suggestion would be a couple of things. One, traffic speed studies. So that if the concern is safety, obviously the metric for safety is accidents. But if the concern is speed, and speed is very easy to monitor, especially if we get the portable radar signs in. So if I've got the motion right as amended, it would be open the road for a 6-month trial with a suite of sort of safety enhancements. So you'd have the community safety zone. So the purpose of the community safety zone is it's already a 40-kilometer-an-hour zone now. So really the impact of that would be doubling the infraction costs, right? Fines. So you'd monitor compliance with the community safety zone. One of the things I'd love to get a handle on is just how many pedestrians actually cross at the new all-way stop. You would monitor accidents both along the road and at the intersections, and I would suggest monitoring actual volumes versus the projected volumes that are in the Triton Engineering report. So there'd be a few different metrics associated with volumes, and I think the key one for safety is obviously accidents. I know there's perceived safety issues anytime you introduce additional traffic, and that's fair. And along with it, you have to put in as many safety enhancements as you can. And I think council's doing that, or would be doing that responsibly. And the metric is really monitor safety, monitor traffic volumes compared to the report. And I'd love to get some pedestrian intel so that we could make that informed decision on the crossing guard.
Right. And if you don't mind, another follow-up, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Just on the community safety zone. So I'm going back to when I did some ride-alongs with the various police services, and there was some discussion about oversaturation of community safety zones. And specifically when you have too many, they tend to be ignored, or they're not as, people don't obey them quite as stringently as they did. So not to muddy the waters and add a new dimension to this whole thing, but really I think the community safety zone piece would only be required, or I think I would only support it if we're actually opening up college. Again, just worried about the dilution. We made that one long blind line for the schools that are along there. And again, if eventually the whole community is a community safety zone, things just go right back to normal, and people ignore it.
That's a good point. And my understanding is these sort of suite of safety enhancement would be in conjunction with open, if I heard the motion correctly. So, and that's the impactful time to do it.
Right.
You make a change to the traffic, and then you make it at the same time or in advance, you make the change to the suite of safety things that you're doing for the community, and that's what makes an impact. If you do them first, when you open up the road 2 years from now, it's just going to be an opening with no extra change, no changes. So the time to do it is when you're opening the road, right?
Yeah, I think Councillor Sherwood's motion may have been to include that in the suite of measures while keeping it closed. So I just wanted to make sort of my stance known on that. So thank you.
Good.
Okay, Councillor Sherwood again.
Yes, Your Worship. Sorry, I might have missed this, Madam Clerk, and I hate to call upon you again and take up precious time, but I'm trying to understand again why we can't separate the vote. We've done this on other times, and I just don't know why we can't separate voting on the second paragraph of the recommendation from the rest of the recommendations.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Sherwood. I didn't mean to intend that you're saying that you couldn't separate a vote. You can absolutely at any time separate the vote. However, what I'm hearing being discussed are amendments to the main motion, and you're required to vote on your amendments prior to proceeding with your main motion. So when you get to the main motion, you can certainly separate any parts of those main motion recommendations out.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so
can we have a recorded vote?
Yeah, at this point, we have the original recommendation and then the addition of a 6-month trial. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the addition of a community safety zone, I believe, was also mentioned. And I made that friendly amendment. Councillor Peters, I guess, accepted that. So, Councillor or Madam Clerk, we vote on this, and then that's, if it's defeated, then we're back to the original motion, and we can go through what Councillor Sherwood had recommended. It was parceling this out. Is that correct?
Okay, so right now you just vote on the actual amendments which deal with the 6-month trial period and the community safety zone. Then you can bring forward the recommendations contained within the main motion.
Okay, fair enough. So let's vote on this amendment. All those in favor of adding those 2 items on?
We have a recorded vote, Your Worship.
Sure. On this, yeah. Madam Clerk, recorded vote.
Yep. So I'll start with. Yep.
On the amendment. On the
amendment only. Yes, at this point in time. So Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
No.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
Councillor Post.
No.
Councillor Sherwood.
No.
Councillor Taylor.
No.
Councillor Andrews.
No.
Mayor Brown.
Yes. So that is defeated. So we're now back to the original recommendation. Councillor Sherwood has requested that we break this up. So Councillor Sherwood, would you like to move that the bylaw be presented to implement an all-way stop at the intersection of College and Fieldgate? And what else?
Yes, Your Worship, along with putting some 40-kilometer on College between Blind Line and where am I now? What's west of Blind Line?
Well, you're connected to it's Fieldgate, I guess, is it's running to, I believe. Does Fieldgate not swing by and are back around and connect with College?
So when I drove that area there between Blind Line and heading west, it ends at Hanson, right? There's no 40-kilometer. So I'm asking that we do the always stop, 40-kilometer, and a community safety zone. Only because there's 3 schools in the park in that area.
But we're not changing anything on the community safety zone, Councillor Sherwood. Is it necessary to add that in?
Okay.
And if we could ask Mr. Kosovac here, I believe we had a conversation earlier today, Mr. Kosovac, and the fact that 40-kilometer signs are being planned. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, Your Worship. So we're going to put an additional 40-kilometer sign on College Avenue for westbound traffic just west of Blind. So just west of Blind Line. So that'll pick up the whole stretch for people coming off Blind Line. The other one that was going to be added, Councillor Sherwood, if you recall, is if if College was opened, you'd be coming off a 50-kilometer-an-hour Hanson Boulevard onto College, and you would need an additional sign there because there's a speed change. So, I mean, that one couldn't be put up anyway. I think we'll just go ahead and put those up. We don't need council can direct us to do it if you like, but that's something that's in the work plan anyway.
So really, it sounds like, Councillor Sherwood, we're kind of distilling this down to really the all-way stop, are we not?
Yes.
All right, I see Councillor Taylor has got his hand up. Yes, sir. What would you like?
I just had a question on procedure here, if I could make sure I understand, but I know we're moving to the stop sign, but aren't we putting the cart before the horse? Wouldn't we vote on the first part of that, which is the overarching piece here, which is, are you opening the roadway or not? And then you would talk about part two?
Not according to what the clerk just explained to us.
We're breaking it up into parts here. So the stop.
But you could have a closed College, and now you're putting a stop sign, which, by the way, we voted on this 2 years ago and it was turned down.
No, it's back again. So as long as council
It's a frustrating night.
Wants to vote on it. So yeah. Councillors, Councillor Sherwood has asked to break up this recommendation and asked for the stop sign, the always stop sign, to be pulled out and voted on separately. Do we have a seconder for that? I'm sorry, Madam Clerk.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I could just perhaps help with the request to separate the vote. My suggestion is you just, because it would appear as though the always stop is coming in as an amendment, and you typically need to call your votes on your amendments first. But if you want to proceed, like don't vote on the actual College opening together with the always stop in one motion. Okay.
That's my point.
The always is not an amendment. It's in the recommendation.
Well, it's not currently in the recommendation, right? Because you have a main motion that does not include that always stop.
And that's not true. We have a recommendation that includes the always stop. There's four items here. One of them is the always stop.
So, but right now we're rolling them into the same vote. And I think Councillor Sherwood did request that it be separated.
That's correct.
So like if you're separating the vote, you have two recommendations in here right now, right? Well, actually you have four. So if you're just, Councillor Sherwood, if you're separating the vote to have them both called at the same time, then procedurally you need to indicate that.
Okay, that's clear as mud. I'm sorry.
Okay, so maybe why don't we just take it from the top? Then the first one is just, why don't we just deal with receipt of the report? Because you have a mover and seconder on that particular, Councillor Taylor and Mayor Brown, and then just receive the report. And then perhaps
all in favor of receiving the report. I think we might have unanimous on that.
There we go.
All right. Very good. Now, the next point is, will College Avenue be open to traffic to allow travel to these properties west of?
That's
so right. And Deputy Mayor, you want to call a vote on this?
Please. That was my original thought.
That was the intent. Okay.
Yes. My apologies. I was confused.
Although I'm in favor of opening it, was only going to be in favor if there were some additional amendments put into this. So on this item, particularly without those additional amendments, I will also be voting no. Okay, so call the vote, please, Madam Clerk.
And if I could just clarify, Deputy Mayor McIntosh, you are requesting the recorded vote on this particular item?
Please.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh?
So may I request the actual language of this?
And that College Avenue be open to traffic to allow travel from those properties west of the Hanson Boulevard missing link easterly.
Okay.
That's what we're voting on right now. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Deputy Mayor McIntosh?
No.
Councillor Peters?
No.
Councillor Post?
No.
Councillor Sherwood?
No.
Councillor Taylor,
No.
Councillor Andrews,
No.
Mayor Brown.
No. Next item.
That is
Councillor
lost, Mr. Mayor.
That is lost. Yes. Next motion, Councillor Sherwood is asking that the bylaw be presented to implement an all-way stop at the intersection of College Avenue and Fieldgate. Seconder for that. Do we need a seconder, Madam Clerk? Yeah. Okay. Let's go with.
You already have a mover and seconder to
for
the whole
thing. All right. Very good. All right. All in favor?
Can we talk about
sorry. Are you, okay. Go ahead. Yep. Councillor Peters and then Councillor Taylor.
I think Councillor Taylor was first.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Peters. Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Sherwood. Councillor Sherwood, can you share why you're bringing this motion forward at this time? What is the purpose of the stop sign on College? Why do you want to have this in tonight?
I've had an opportunity to spend some time in that neighborhood, and I do respect that you and Councillor Post brought this up a couple of years ago, and I will be quite honest that I didn't spend any time in that neighborhood to see it, but I can see there is a need for it now, and that is my reason for bringing it forward now. I wish I had voted differently back then.
What is the rationale, though, outside of the busy neighborhood, if I may? Like, what do you see as the issue? Why do we need the stop sign?
For the same reason that you want stop signs at any other place in throughout town.
Okay. Councillor Peters, go ahead.
Certainly. I just through you to Mr. Koselak. I think this is maybe perhaps where Councillor Taylor was going, but I also voted against the stop sign at the time, recognizing that some of the parameters have changed for stop signs. Could you perhaps talk to the pedestrian aspect specifically, and looking at the crossing? Because perhaps if we're talking specifically about pedestrians and not traffic, in a more broad sense, there's a different solution for that neighborhood. And so I'd be hesitant to just go ahead and slap on a stop sign if we're not solving the correct problem.
Mr. Koselak.
So through your worship, you'll recall my comments earlier tonight. The idea of putting some sort of traffic control device in the middle of these long blocks, if I could call them that, is a good one. And primarily, not really to control traffic. In my mind, it's to afford pedestrians an opportunity to cross. In chatting with Mr. Garcia, who did the traffic calming study for us, that can be achieved through a pedestrian crossover. That would be nowhere near meeting warrants for a traffic signal. So a pedestrian crossover or an all-way stop. Most communities, I think, believe that pedestrian crossovers are a more appropriate control device. I think the challenge Orangeville faces is you don't have a lot of pedestrian crossovers, so people aren't used to seeing them. And an all-way stop is more accepted in the community. So in that sense, the concept of an all-way stop isn't a bad one. The other comment I think I made, the warrants have changed. We need to update our policy, get it back to council, and reflect what's in the current Ontario Traffic Manual, because they're different. I'm a believer in warrants. I think they make a lot of sense because motorists should expect to see the same thing in Orangeville as they see in Toronto and Oshawa. It's the idea that traffic control devices are uniform through all communities actually leads to increased safety. So I'm a supporter of that, but I also see the need to update that policy, reflect that there are needs for pedestrian crossings, and I think through the policy identify sort of maximum block lengths so you can actually put in those crossing locations, and whether it's through an all-way stop or a PXO, it's an appropriate treatment for safety.
Right, and I do think getting a crossing of some sort in that neighborhood makes sense and is warranted. I guess again, I don't want to just go to the first solution that is presented before us if we're trying to solve the pedestrian problem. And I know you had a a gap in service, so to speak. But we have put one in at Alder and now one in on Elizabeth. So the PXOs are becoming more common in town. And if that's the most appropriate pedestrian treatment for that area, then that's what I would want to support. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yes, Mr. Koslick.
Perhaps, Your Worship, if the mover is amenable, I mean, and one option is direct staff to go back and bring back a report to council that recommends. We haven't done the analysis based on college not being opened, and we really haven't done an analysis of a PXO versus the all-way stop. If should there be desire, we can do that analysis and bring a report back recommending one or the other. That's fine and fair.
Makes sense. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Koslick. We've got Councillor Taylor, Post, and Andrews. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Sherwood. Councillor Sherwood, I just want to say I really appreciate you admitting that and changing your mind. I think an informed community servant does just what you did. So kudos to you. And if I could kind of put words in your mouth, I think you're describing that long roadway requires a stop sign. And the warrants that Mr. Koslick is describing actually gives credence to that, which means to me, I would appreciate a friendly amendment to this, and I would be happy to support College and Fieldgate, but I would also want to add Spencer and Cornwall Gate. I would add Alder and Glengarry, and I would add Meadow Drive and Pheasant Drive to that list. And we can either do two things. We can approve those tonight, which I would love to do, or we could refer them to Mr. Koslick for his warrant study. And I would be fine with either, but it doesn't make sense to do College Fieldgate and not include those other three areas I just mentioned. And full disclosure, I'd sent this through. I thought we wouldn't get to where we were going tonight, but I was going to suggest this as a notice of motion for next meeting, and I've sent this into the clerks, which is in writing right now and in their hands in their email. But if we could do it tonight, I'd be thrilled.
Your Worship, I'd like to withdraw my motion. I'm at this time, I'm leaning more towards what Mr. Koslick is suggesting, that a staff report come back and that we look at all those different areas. So my motion's withdrawn.
Thank you. All right. Before we get back to Councillor Taylor, we'll let Councillor Andrews and Post, and then maybe Councillor Taylor, you'd like to make a motion on that?
Sure, I can.
On
Sure.
the floor,
Okay.
like, I would support what Councillor Sherwood just said and what Mr. Koslick is suggesting, and that is do a staff report and look at the PXO option on College, and then add in those other three locations that you had just mentioned, and bring a report back in the near future to us. Councillor Andrews and then Post, please. Then we'll go
Councillor
back.
Post was before me.
Okay, I'm sorry. Councillor Post.
Thank you so much, Councillor Andrews and Mr. Mayor. I was very pleased to see that we were almost at the point where we were going to approve College and Fieldgate. I feel that regardless, I mean, yes, we do want to work on pedestrian traffic, but I think the reality too is that this road will be opened eventually, even though we're not opening it now. When Hanson does come across, that road is going to be open, and there is going to be a need for that stop sign to be there. There's a need for that stop sign to be there now. I would love to see that part move forward tonight. And the additional three, I think, thank you, Councillor Taylor, for bringing those forward. I think that those with a staff report at our next council meeting or next reasonable council meeting for Mr. Koslick would be a great way to go.
Thank you, Councillor Post. Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and this has been healthy dialogue, I have to admit, and I appreciate, again, Mr. Koslick's response of having a staff report providing us with some additional information to consider. I do really like the idea of the timing too, as well, as was referenced by Mr. Osmond and also referenced by Mr. Koslick, that we will be getting some additional information on metrics regarding crossing guards and consideration. So, maybe some of these other locations that Councillor Taylor has also referenced may be candidates, not stressing that they are, but they could be part of the process in the dialogue that we end up having sometime, I guess, in June. So I will look forward to supporting, the staff report that will be coming, as has been referenced. Thank you.
Okay, so I think essentially the entire recommendation here, other than the reception of the report, has been, voted down. So, Councillor Taylor, do you want to make a motion now on these various stop sign locations to have a study done and brought back to council?
I would. I'd be thrilled for the opportunity.
Madam Clerk, you're weighing in here. Sorry.
If you don't mind, because we still have the original motion on the floor, but the two votes that need to be called as it relates to the two bylaws. So if I may just suggest that the matter of the bylaw as it relates to an all-way stop at College and Fieldgate be referred back to staff to report back on as a result of a study that staff is going to undertake, or additional work that staff is going to undertake, and that it also include then the three other intersections that Councillor Taylor referred to. So it's a referral back to staff. That's one vote. And then I'm not sure where council sits as it relates to the bylaw with respect to restricting heavy construction vehicles.
So I will put my motion back on the table based on with those wording, Madam Clerk.
Okay, so that is on the table with Councillor Taylor and Mayor Brown.
Okay.
But the main motion is, so if you want to, Councillor Sherwood, refer it back to staff based on what I just said, you can be the mover of that particular motion, and then you need the seconder to refer it.
And can we review the motion for us smaller folks?
Would you like me to?
Sure,
before I do that, can I just ask if this is to include the bylaw with respect to restricting heavy construction vehicles from using College east of Hanson Boulevard? Is that to be included in the referral?
Well, frankly, it doesn't make any sense until such time as it's open. So I think we're wasting our breath on that particular one, but
But it's on so if it's on the floor and it's not appropriate, then it would be appropriate to call the vote on that one and
okay.
Vote
Fair
accordingly.
enough. Let's do that. Okay, so we're on item 3 here, which is the all-way stop. The motion is to refer it back to staff for consideration, including a potential PXO on College rather than stop sign, and to add in Councillor Taylor's request for 3 other locations to be reviewed by staff and bring back a report based on the new warrants that Mr. Koselleck referenced. Is that correct, everybody? We get some nods here. Yeah. Okay, so Councillor Sherwood, you friendly amendment from Mr. Taylor on that with adding those other 3 locations?
I think we're good. I think we've got it good.
Okay. So Madam Clerk, Sherwood makes the motion on the stop sign. Taylor is the seconder on this?
Yes.
All right, all in favor? Okay. So moving on to the last item, this is a bylaw to present and presented to restrict heavy construction vehicles from using College Avenue east of Hanson. I'll make the motion. Anybody want to second it? Deputy Mayor?
If I may, isn't it moot?
Yes,
It is moot, but
it is as part of the main motion, which was originally Councillor Taylor and Mayor Brown.
so
you just need to call the vote on it. Yes.
All in favor? Opposed? Opposed? I'm sorry.
Wouldn't we just
I'm opposed.
not vote?
I mean, I'm opposed because I think it's moot, and I
Yeah.
so we've got how many opposed?
Would
Everybody
you just not vote?
If you don't vote, it is a no
abstain,
vote.
it's a no.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got, looks like 6 no's and 1 abstention from Councillor Taylor.
Well,
All right, let's move on. Thank you, everybody. That was interesting for sure.
that was good discussion.
Yeah. All right, moving on to 1214. This is Cache Developments. I'm just wondering, should we take a 5-minute break right now, folks? We've been at it for 2 hours now. Why don't we take a 5-minute break and we'll be back in a couple minutes.
Thank you.
To 1214. This is a recommendation that report INS 2022-037, Cache Developments Orangeville Inc., blocks 94 and 98, Plan 7M-70, follow up to Ontario Land Tribunal approval and council direction be received. And that based on the information presented in this report and report INS 2022-038, having been submitted in response to council's direction on March 21st, 2022, with respect to this matter, the council directed the town solicitor to submit to the Ontario Land Tribunal for final approval and enactment the official plan amendment number 130 and the zoning bylaw amendment included as attachments number 1 and 2 in this report. Can we have a motion to put this on the floor, please? Councillor Sherwood, seconded by Councillor Andrews. All right, any comments or questions, councillors? All in favor? Sorry, all in favor again? Peters, Brown, Sherwood, opposed?
You didn't give any time for discussion, Your Worship, otherwise I would have offered why.
No, I did ask for discussion, Councillor.
We went a little quick, but yeah. I hold steady with my vote.
Okay. All right. Well, so, all right. Well, that's the vote then. There's nothing more to say. Okay. Moving on. We have correspondence from Township of Amaranth. A couple of things. The Ontario Plowmen's Association is something that Town of Amaranth is looking to host in 2023. We have the Grand Valley Municipal Comprehensive Review and the report from Charles Harnick regarding Integrity Commissioner report on complaints against myself and council. And we've got a number of letters received regarding the opening of College Avenue from a number of folks on both sides of that argument. So can we have a motion to receive these, please? Councillor Andrews and Councillor Post. Very good. All in favor? Thank you. On to committee and board minutes, 14.1 and 14.2. Can we have a motion to receive those, please? Councillor Deputy Mayor McIntosh, second by Councillor Post. All in favor? Very good. Notice of motion prior to meeting. Councillor Sherwood, do you want to go ahead and share what you'd like to do here?
Sure, I'll just quickly read the motion for those that aren't aware. Whereas the Orangeville Blues and Jazz Festival will be held on June 3rd and 4th, 2022, and whereas it's desirable to provide free transit throughout Orangeville during the Orangeville Blues and Jazz Festival for the following reasons. It's a great way to promote our transit system. Like, try it, you might like it. It provides more park and ride options. It makes the festival more accessible for all residents. It reduces the strain on parking and traffic. And it is a way to promote business owners to encourage their weekend staff to take the bus to work to further reduce parking strain. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the free transit be provided throughout the town for the days of June 3rd and 4th, 2022. Do I have a seconder?
Councillor Post. Any further questions or comments, councillors?
I could make one more comment. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
I'm just wondering if we understood what the cost of this initiative would be.
And that's funny that you mentioned that, Councillor Taylor, because that's exactly what I was just going to speak on. I did reach out to staff to find out what the cost would be, and the data they have is for the last festival, which was in 2019, and on Friday fares were $480, and on Saturday the fares were $266. So the cost of giving free transit is an estimated $748. One of the things I do want to add is that the Orangeville BIA are going to be paying for a complimentary shuttle service, and they kick in after hours, and they have key points that they're going to be providing shuttle service. So they're already paying for that. But as far as the cost for the transit for the Friday and Saturday, because of course we don't run on Sunday, would be about $750 based on that data.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you. I think this is a great idea. We all know our transit is being underutilized, and I think this is just one way we can try to get people to use it, make people aware of what's out there. So I just hope all our buses are running that weekend, all the good buses. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so we have a motion from Councillor Sherwood on free transit during the Blues and Jazz Festival, seconded by Councillor Post. Any other comments? All in favor? All right.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. All right, moving on to 15.2. This is a motion from Councillor Peters regarding the Ontario Land Tribunal. Councillor Peters, do you want to speak to this before we vote?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will not quickly read it because it is quite lengthy. Truth be told, I did not write it. I collaborated with town staff on it, but it came out of Mayor Maracas out of Aurora. And it stems from the frustration that municipalities have when dealing with planning decisions. Municipalities create official plans. They have to be in accordance with the provincial policy statement, and you can check all the boxes, and the appeal process can still result in a decision that violates many of those parameters. And so this was brought forth several months ago, and many other municipalities have also had motions like this passed at their councils. And, I certainly don't think all the kinks are worked out, but it would force the province to reevaluate its role and its existence. And even in our brief term, we've seen the name change twice. We've seen its mandate, go back and forth with MZOs and things like that. So this was just something I thought was relevant, given that we're going through our official plan process and that we have a lot of planning decisions, in the recent past and in years to come.
Yeah, it's also curious, Councillor Peters, that Ontario is the only province that has this tribunal, which, you'd think there was probably some sort of appeal mechanism. It'd be interesting to investigate what the other provinces do. But, and we've seen it happen right here recently with influence from the county on the Cache development, for instance, by coming out with a consult report on employment lands, which really pulled the rug out from under us with any potential stopping of those developments. So I don't know, municipalities, the voters out there think somehow we're in control on planning matters. And the fact of the matter is the province holds the trump card in every way. And the developers, the deeper the pockets they have and the more persistence they have, the more likely it is that they're going to get their way. We've seen it happen all over this province. So I think that system's broken, and I'm going to support Councillor Peters' motion here. I think the province needs to take a long, hard look at this and come up with a better way. Councillor Taylor, then Post, then Sherwood.
Thank you, Your Worship. This dovetails very nicely. And first off, thank you so much, Councillor Peters. This is timely and really well done. It dovetails with the issue that we all just voted no, or well, 4 of us voted no on, and that is the residents up in Veterans Way. What happened was we actually said to the builder that we don't agree with the Ontario Land Tribunal, and we're not in favor of you allowing you being able to continue to build there. Well, capital improvements to that area must happen. And that's all the comments I wanted to make when we missed our chance to talk there. But it fits so nicely with what you've done here, Councillor Peters, because it shares the frustration of why we're in the spot that we are in Veterans Way. And so we'll see. We're probably going to court. We'll have some issues with the Ontario Land Tribunal, but we'll see how that shakes out. And I applaud your efforts here tonight, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Post, and then Sherwood.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'm happy to second Councillor Peters' motion to get it officially on the floor. And my second comment was similar to that of Councillor Taylor's, where through our term of council, we've already felt the pressure to vote and support developments that maybe aren't the right fit for our community. We've seen it several times, and we've been forced to feel a little handcuffed by the province. And when it comes to true community development, I think it's only fair for municipalities to have the opportunity to make some of the final decisions without the threat of being taken to tribunal. So thank you for putting forward such a thoughtful motion, and I am absolutely thrilled to support it tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Post. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Peters. So in your motion, is there any thought as to what then would be the appeal process? Or like you mentioned that Ontario is the only one that has this tribunal. What do other provinces do for those developers that want to appeal that?
I did try looking into that. It's a bit of a rabbit hole to go down. I know that there is a legal process to back the entire thing up if there's no sort of provincial policy in place. I don't have the answer to the appeal mechanism, both what it looks like specifically in other areas, nor what it may look like. But I think that would have to be part of a larger process that the province undertakes, should the pressure be great enough for them to consider alternatives. So I wish I had a great answer for that, but I don't have the planning background or experience in that area to possibly dream up what that might look like. But I agree, an appeal mechanism still should exist for those cases where the decisions are not in the best interest of the community, whether or not they are sometimes falling into the wrong hands, so to speak. But between elected officials and strong official plans and the provincial policy statement, which exists, those three levels of checks and balances, I would hope would be enough for 99% of planning decisions, and that the OLT doesn't have to be a fourth layer and one that does not necessarily align with the other three.
Or we could possibly, sorry, and we could possibly have our own appeal committee at the municipal level, right?
Yeah, one of the main,
say the committee of adjustment or something like that.
One of the main points in here, talks about how the OLT is made up of non-elected members, and we have people that are being appointed by who knows who, living in jurisdictions unbeknownst to us, making decisions on our local conditions. So yeah, I wish I had a better answer for you, but I'm sure that would be worked out at the provincial level if and when the pressure from municipalities is great enough to drive this decision.
Remember who you're voting for, folks. The coming election. Anyway, we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Peters. I believe Councillor Post seconded that. Any further comments on this? All in favor? All right, thank you, Councillor Peters, for your motion. Moving on, any notices of motion at the meeting? No. Any new business? Seeing none. Ms. Porman-Cherry or Madam Clerk, do we have anybody on the line that wishes to speak during question period?
Through your worship, currently we have one caller on the line.
Okay. Would that be 2230?
Correct.
Caller at last four digits 2230. Do you wish to speak? If so, press *6 and unmute, please. Okay, I guess they do not wish to speak. All right, well, moving on to our bylaws. We have bylaws 19.1 through 19.10. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Mayor. It's just that I have to ask you to remove 19.7 and 19.8 because it was subject to the report where the matters were referred back to staff.
Very good. Okay. Yes, thank you. So we've got 19.1 through 19.6 and then 19.9 and 19.10. So could we have a motion to approve these bylaws, please? Councillor Andrews, second by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. All in favor? All right, and a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Taylor, second by Councillor Post. All in favor?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Night all.
Good night, all.
everyone.
Good night all.
Thank you.